Joining me on the line now is Radio Nene Valley's resident poet from Northampton, James McInerney. Hello, James.
Hiya.
Just for the sake of our new listeners, how did you actually start writing poetry? What made you think I could do that?
Well, I didn't actually like poetry. I wasn't into poetry at school only because it wasn't taught. The only thing we learnt about poetry was learning about like Shakespeare, and it was very dull and boring. Never really got into it. Wasn't interested, and just left school. Kind of got on with my life, and then started watching movies because I love movies, and loved the kind of scores, the film scores on movies, and loved how they changed the scene with the music, how it made it more emotional. So I started looking on. I can't remember what the music kind of program was at that time. It definitely wasn't Spotify because that wasn't around. But started listening to the soundtracks, probably iTunes, and then started just writing down my thoughts as I heard the music, how it made me feel. Started then posting that on no social sites were available at that point. There was no Facebook, no nothing. So I was posting on email news groups.
Oh yeah, I remember
an
them.
old,
yeah,
I'm showing my age. But I started posting on them and got a good feedback from people in the groups, and then kind of as the kind of social sites came on scene, like Facebook and everything else, I started just basically posting onto there, cross-posting different places, and people started to kind of build up an audience of people that liked my work, and just kind of went from there really, and that spurred me on to want to keep writing. So because of that, that's kind of, I think, like people say, you have fans. I didn't really think about it at the time, but fans do spur you on to keep writing. Even though I love writing, when you get good feedback and good comments and likes and things like that, people really do look for your work online. You know you've got an audience. You kind of it spurs you on to want to keep writing because you've got an audience and you want to give something back to those people. So, and they buy the books, and and there's a good fan base there, and they kind of look everything I do. They kind of like they're looking out for what I'm doing next and where I am, and so when you've got a fan base, that helps as well as loving writing.
Well, as we said a little bit earlier, when you were at school, poetry wasn't really a major part of the national curriculum, was it? Has it improved? Is it there now?
It is. I mean, I've been seeing the highs and lows of poetry. So I've seen it at when no one cared about poetry. People thought there were kind of people in frilly collars who wrote poems, and that's not. I've seen the worst of it, and then I've seen when it was reintroduced into the GCSEs a few years back, where people had to study poets, had to look at poems, and they really had to break down poetry. To understand it, and kids got into poetry as well as having social sites. So places like Instagram is good for poets. So the two kind of things that are combined of kids getting into poetry and these social sites, it kind of made poetry popular again. And so I've seen both sides, the kind of quiet side and then the busy side of poetry.
When we first spoke, which is many years ago now, you were doing building work as well, weren't you? The day job. At what point did you think I'd like to expand on my hobby?
When I kind of went on the BBC and I was on the air. I think it was the first time I went on, and the kind of presenter, I think may have been Bernie Keith at the time, said to me, because of all the things I'd done, you need to get a book out. Like, I didn't think of a book. To be fair, I was just enjoying the social side. I was enjoying writing and sharing it. At that time, to become an author is quite hard, and especially a niche market like poetry. So I didn't think of books. I was just enjoying the social aspect of it. I got a book out, and kind of from then, I've got my sixth book is out next year, and I was releasing pretty much a book every year. Fans were buying them and that. So yeah. So it helps about balance, so that you can make a living out of it. But it's still like it is a niche market. It is a thing where if I was writing prose, it would probably be easier, but poetry is a completely different market. So you've really got to do well in your market to do well.
I think there is a place for poetry in the modern world, with sort of everybody darting all over the place. Does it still get an interest from people?
Yeah, I think it does. Like I say, the young kids now are really into poetry, and not so much. I say poetry as well, but also the kind of the quotes as well. They've gone down. People really kind of on social sites like to see the inspirational quotes, and they reshare them, and they're really popular. So what I tend to do with my work is I'll take a bigger poem and I'll take it into small chunks and put it as a bite-sized piece to get people interested in your work. And then when they see that, always got books out, and that's kind of how it goes. And like I say, if you look at the actual hashtag on poetry on Instagram, there's 42 million posts so far, and rising. So it's quite a heavily used thing on Instagram.
Because you actually I have noticed online, you're turning some of your excerpts of poetry, you turn them into sort of decor items, aren't you? Sort of framed quotes from James McInerney.
Yeah, we've had that happen over the years, and people will actually come to me and say, "Is there any way I can get this framed or anything like that?" Because they love a quote, and we've actually sold quite a few where people have them hanging on walls, or they give them as gifts. Because obviously that's just the way it is. That's the way people work. People see something they love, and they kind of want it framed because it means something to them. And I think sometimes people read something, and we'll all read the same poem, but it will mean something completely different to each and every one of us. And that's kind of how that kind of, I thought, what do we try? When I go to the events, I do take a lot of framed poems with me, and we kind of have those and sell them as well, because people come up to the stall and say, "Oh, I like that," and they'll read them and they'll just buy them as gifts. So why not?
Yeah, why not? It gets it out there, doesn't it?
Yeah,
now, you when you keep tweaking a poem, sort of, no, it doesn't quite work. What if I do? Yeah. Do you ever get to the point where you go, no, I think the first version was the best one?
Yeah, I've done that over the years. I've literally started off with a poem. I've looked at it. I'm the king of editing, really, because what I tend to do is I will look at a poem and think, I don't like that bit. I'll take that bit out. I edit it so much that the original poem is like kind of non-existent, and then what I end up doing is going back to the original poem and actually liking the original poem before the edit. So I think you can, when you get to a point where you've got a lot of people kind of watching your account to see what you write next, it can be daunting. So I think you tend to kind of get a bit overwhelmed in the fact that you're worried about what you write and does it mean something and how are people going to react. So you do tend to think of, it was my mistake kind of when I first started doing it, but I've learned now is that you've got to just write for you as opposed to what will people think of this. And that became I edited things to death. Will that be okay? Will that be good enough? And that tends to happen when you have like an audience and you know they're going to be looking at what you're writing next. So you tend to kind of like overthink. And that's where the editing comes from.
Right. Now, you said a little bit earlier that you've done very well selling the sort of framed quotes. So do people prefer short poems or longer ones? Or does it vary by person? I like short ones best.
Well, the short, yeah, short, only because people's timelines are so busy. You know, you look at your timeline on any social site you've got, Facebook, Instagram, there's every 2 seconds there's something new being posted. So people don't have time to kind of sit there. They just don't, in general, have the kind of capacity to read a long lot of text. And I've experimented with that by putting long pieces on and then breaking down to smaller chunks. And I found the audience is better with the smaller, bite-sized, digestible pieces than something that's going to take them a couple of minutes to read. I mean, it's sad, really, but it's just the way people are. But I suppose when they buy the books are more in depth than longer pieces, so they'll see the longer pieces if they buy the books.
When we first spoke, many years ago, I asked you the question, how do you get your poems out to an audience? And basically it was with social media or, well, basically it was social media then, wasn't it? Whether it was Twitter or any of those. But now you're getting a lot of, well, basically, do you want to explain the poetry project?
Yeah, So basically, obviously, I wrote books and etc., and we got good feedback from the poems online that people would say to me, "I needed this today. I've lost someone. This made me feel something." So I thought, well, if we're helping people online, why don't we take the same process and go outdoors? So basically, put in how you feel in the public place. The reason we did this for was basically because of mental health awareness. And the thing with mental health awareness, it was very in the old days. It's better now, but it was very taboo. So what we tried to do is the equivalent of taking someone's diary and their thoughts and basically putting it in a public place. Uh, when you do that and someone reads that and they relate to it and they see that it's in public and not hidden behind closed doors and something, it makes them feel as though it's not that bad. So we started up the poetry project to basically raise awareness of mental health and make the subject matter around it less taboo. I've been doing this since 2018 now, and we started on the London Underground, across all the underground train stations. We're still at London Stansted. We've been there for like a year now. And in 2019, we went across the entire UK with it, into shopping centres, parks, gyms, schools, universities, anywhere you can imagine. We were with the project in 2019. And then 2020 we were on a roll for 2020 with festivals and everything. And then obviously COVID hit. But we've done the whole of the UK, well, pretty much a lot of the UK, worked with great charities, agencies. We've been to America and Australia with it as well, and kind of it went really well. And the thing I found with in the UK, we're geared up for mental health anyway, but I started dealing with America, and they're really well behind when it comes to mental health awareness. I've had a lot of Zoom meetings with American charities and organisations, and they basically tell me that it's like banging your head against a brick wall in America, because you're supposed to pull your bootstraps up and get on with it in America. So when we started putting this in Oregon, it went in a mall in Oregon. They did a big exhibition, put it everywhere across the entire mall, and I got basically from probably the most pictures from that place out of the whole project was in America, where people just were very kind of like confused to seeing these kind of things in public because they're not used to it. So I started that in 2018, and we just started now back up. Obviously now everyone's back outdoors, and we've started to have a lot of Zoom meetings, and we're getting back to kind of where we were before COVID with it.
So what sort of effect on yourself and the poetry project has the sort of pandemic and lockdown had on you? Has it affected you a lot?
Oh yeah, because we're a public we're out in the public with the project. So we were basically in shopping centres, malls, everywhere that was a public place. We were there, schools and everything. So when everywhere got shut down, the people that I was dealing with, having meetings, were setting these campaigns up, were like, at the moment, we need to pause everything. And that was across the board. That was across everywhere. So everywhere kind of went on hold outdoors with the project. So we switched over to social media and basically worked with London Stansted, worked with all these places to get these messages online and to keep the kind of thing going.
How important is social media to you? I know you've expanded it a lot with the poetry project. You said there you've gone back to the social media a little bit more with the lockdown. Is it still important to you?
It is it is, but I'm so busy with emails now, and Zoom meetings. I still keep up social media because I have a lot of fans, so I'm very invested in that, in the fact that I want to say thank you to everyone that's followed me all these years, and I want to keep there to be content coming out for them who have stuck with me, brought all the books. Every time books come out, they brought one and kind of stuck with me over the years. So I do have social media time every day. I do stuff on social media, upload stuff, just because I want to keep fans happy, and I do enjoy that side of it, and I enjoy seeing how people respond to stuff online. But my kind of majority of my time now is in Zoom meetings or doing things with a project or writing the next book. So I have to kind of find a balance in the day and getting it, but it's kind of more email heavy now than it was before in the old days.
Which is the most influential of the social medias now?
Oh, it's Instagram, definitely. I mean, Instagram is by far, due to content and the amount of people that use Instagram, is the biggest. Facebook, I've never really kind of got into Facebook. Not really. I think it's okay if you're posting a picture of a puppy or something like that, or something good. But I've never really got into Facebook. Twitter, I like Twitter as well. Twitter can be good, but again, all these social sites are only as good as if you know how to use them properly.
Yes.
And
yeah, very true.
yes,
I think it is, and I know from things we've done with the radio station that it is very time consuming to do it properly, isn't it? To do it well.
It is. It can be. I mean, I tend to have, like, when I open my tabs and I'm sharing something new, I have like my Internet Explorer, whatever it is, open, and about 30 tabs across the top, which is basically each social site, and I just basically cross post to each social site because I have a time limit, because I have so much to get through, and loads of emails to go through and meetings to get into. So you gotta, like I say, with social media, they're good and they're good for getting your stuff out there, but it's easier when you know how to use them effectively.
Right. Have you actually written any poetry that's relevant to the current situation, or have you tried to steer clear of it?
I did actually get asked by the BBC to do a piece in the lockdown. I think how it was. I had the problem was I was in the height of kind of Zoom meetings, and they kind of said, "Can you do it in less than a week? Can you write a new piece? Can you film it?" Because it was for, I can't remember what campaign it was. It was for something, and they wanted basically me acting it. They wanted it. I said I didn't have time. I didn't have to. I generally write things at my own pace. I'm a bit of a nightmare when it comes to someone saying, "Can you write something for this?" Because that's kind of how I've never worked. I've always kind of
still sticking with you're still sticking with the music inspiration then for all your poems.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I use music all the while, so I'm listening to that and thinking of a poem and what I'm going to write next. But they just come naturally, really. I think about something, can they just come? I think if I find it a challenge as a writer, if someone said, "Could you write about, say, a football ground, for example? Could you write something?" For me, that would be like, I get a lot of requests like that, and it's just like I can't do it because I just don't think. I've done it in the past for things like Herald and Post. I think I did a piece for their last ever newspaper, when the last newspaper came out, and I wrote a piece for that, and it was fine. I liked it, but it's just sometimes got so much going on. You have to kind of be in the right zone to do things like that.
Right, you mentioned books earlier. What are you up to now? 6?
Well, six is next year. Well, it's actually written. Yeah. Well, it's written. It's just a case of doing the artwork and getting it all put together and sent off. But yeah, 6. I'm doing 6 and 7 at the same time. Right. So.
And they're all still available on Amazon.
Amazon, Kindle. 1 to 5 are. Like I say, 6. We brought one out last year, but I'm having a break this year. I would have brought one out this year, but with the poetry project, it took up too much time. But I'm still writing for it, so in effect, that book is finished. But it would have come out Christmas, but I'm just so busy, right. This year.
So how can our listeners find out more about you? What's the best way?
The kind of best way is to kind of Google me. When you've been around on the internet for a long time, which I have. If you just Google my name, which is James McInerney, that's McInerney, it brings up everything I've done, like forever. Or just James McInerney Wix, WIX, which takes you to my website, and that you can see everything I've ever done from them, like everyone I've kind of, because I work with a lot of actors as well, so that's kind of been a big thing for me as well. So scheduling actors, writing, you have to have many kind of caps on when you're doing the thing. So you can just basically search, James McInerney Wix on Google. It'll bring up my Instagram, it'll bring up my website, and from there, on each one of my social sites, you can actually see links to my website and everything. So they're all linked in anyway.
Excellent. Now, obviously the brakes have been put on a little bit by the sort of COVID pandemic and the lockdowns that we've had. But have you got anything happening in the near future that people can look out for?
Only other than a new book coming out and then more big campaigns with a project to get the mental health awareness thing. But other than that, I kind of post daily anyway, so people get to see kind of fresh new content anyway. I would have been going to events, obviously, and kind of book signings and meeting fans, which I love doing. I got invited to a lot of Comic Cons. I actually enjoyed them, going to them and meeting fans. I've got loads of pictures with them, which I used to like to share. But I mean, I would have been doing that kind of thing. But obviously, all those things have kind of stopped. So you just have to go with the flow, unfortunately. You know, like I say, it would have been a great year this year. It would have been probably my best year with a project, with my books and all the events I was going to be at. But it's just life, unfortunately.
Okay. Fantastic. Great to talk to you. We'll talk to you again when we've reached a new normal, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for talking to us. Bye-bye.
Bye.